The morning sun cast long shadows across the training grounds of Firebase Delta. 7. But Elena Vasquez wasn't paying attention to the scenery. She was focused on the impossible target array in front of her, a maze of holographic enemies that appeared and disappeared faster than most beings could track. While her fellow human soldiers struggled to hit even stationary targets, Elena moved through the course like liquid mercury, her movements so fluid they seemed to bend reality itself. Impossible, muttered Lieutenant Chen, watching from the observation deck. The sensors must be malfunctioning. No one moves that fast. But Elena wasn't moving fast. That was the secret nobody understood, not even Elena herself at first. She wasn't accelerating beyond human limits. She was moving between the spaces where time forgot to watch. It had started 3 months ago during her first encounter with Zephyrian raiders on the outer colonies. Something had awakened in her during that firefight, something that made the universe slow down while she remained at normal speed. The Zephyrians were considered the apex predators of the galaxy, standing 8 feet tall with natural armor plating and reflexes that put most cybernetic enhancements to shame. Their warrior caste had conquered 17 star systems in the past decade, and human forces had never won a direct engagement against them. Until Elena. She finished the course with a perfect score, every holographic enemy neutralized with precise minimal force. As the simulation ended, she stood in the center of the training ground, not even breathing hard. Her fellow soldiers stared at her with a mixture of awe and unease. Humans weren't supposed to be capable of what she had just done. Sergeant Vasquez, report to Commander Morrison immediately, came the announcement over the comm system. Elena made her way through the corridors of the firebase, passing groups of soldiers who fell silent when they saw her. Word had spread quickly about her abilities, creating an uncomfortable tension throughout the human forces. Some whispered that she was genetically modified, others claimed she was using illegal enhancement drugs. The truth was far stranger than any of their theories. Commander Morrison's office was a Spartan affair, decorated only with commendations and tactical displays. The man himself was a veteran of the colonial wars, his weathered face bearing the scars of battles fought in humanity's desperate expansion into hostile space. He looked up as Elena entered, his expression unreadable. "Sergeant, we need to talk," Morrison said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "Your performance metrics are concerning." Elena sat down, maintaining perfect military posture. "Sir, I'm not sure what you mean. Your reaction times are measuring at impossible levels. Your accuracy rates are beyond what our equipment can properly record. And according to multiple eyewitness accounts, you seem to be moving in ways that our current understanding of physics says shouldn't be possible." Morrison leaned forward. "I need to know what's happening to you, soldier." For a moment, Elena considered lying. It would be easy enough to claim enhanced training or lucky genetics, but something in the commander's tone told her that wouldn't be sufficient. The truth was, she didn't fully understand what was happening to her either. "Sir, 3 months ago, during the raid on Colony 7, something changed," she began carefully. "During the firefight with the Zephyrian assault troops, everything around me seemed to slow down. Not physically slow, but like I was experiencing time differently. I could see every energy bolt, track every movement of the enemy soldiers, and respond with perfect timing." Morrison's expression grew more serious. "Continue. It's not that I'm moving faster than humanly possible, sir. It's like I'm moving through gaps in reality itself, places where the normal rules don't apply. I can step between energy bolts not because I'm quick enough to dodge them, but because I'm somehow not entirely present in the same space they're occupying." The commander was quiet for a long moment, processing what she had told him. Finally, he activated a secure channel on his communication device. "Dr. Hendricks, please report to my office immediately. Bring your theoretical physics team and the classified files from Project Time Walker." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. She had never heard of Project Time Walker, but the way Morrison said it suggested something far beyond normal military research. 20 minutes later, Dr. Sarah Hendricks arrived with 3 other scientists, their arms full of data tablets and sensor equipment. Dr. Hendricks was a brilliant physicist who had been recruited by the military for reasons that were classified above Elena's clearance level. "Sergeant, we're going to run some tests," Dr. Hendricks explained. "Non-invasive scans to measure your bioelectric field and neural activity. Commander Morrison has briefed me on your unusual abilities, and I believe we may have found what we've been looking for." The tests took 2 hours. Elena sat patiently as they used equipment she didn't recognize to scan her from every angle. The scientists whispered among themselves in technical jargon she couldn't follow, but their excitement was obvious.
Remarkable, Doctor.
Hendricks finally said. Sergeant, your neural pathways are generating quantum entanglement patterns that shouldn't be possible in biological tissue. You're essentially creating localized distortions in space-time through pure conscious will. Elena stared at her. I'm sorry, what? You're bending the fabric of reality itself. Morrison translated. The question is, how and why? Doctor. Hendricks pulled up a holographic display showing complex mathematical equations. 20 years ago, our deep space exploratory teams discovered artifacts on a dead world in the Kepler 442 system. These artifacts appeared to be some kind of consciousness enhancement technology left behind by an extinct civilization. The technology was beyond our understanding, but we managed to extract a small amount of the material for study. The display shifted to show images of strange, crystalline structures that seemed to shift and change even in still photographs. Project Timewalker was our attempt to understand how this material interacted with consciousness. We discovered that it could enhance the natural quantum processes that occur in all living brains, essentially allowing consciousness to exist partially outside normal space-time. The project was deemed too dangerous and shut down after several test subjects experienced severe psychological trauma. Elena felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. Doctor, 3 months ago on Colony 7, did our forces encounter any unusual artifacts or technology? Dr. Hendricks and Commander Morrison exchanged glances. Sergeant, Colony 7 was built on top of ruins from the same extinct civilization that created the consciousness enhancement technology. The Zephyrian attack wasn't random. They were after something specific buried in those ruins. The revelation hit Elena like a physical blow. During the battle on Colony 7, she had taken cover behind what she thought was just an odd piece of architecture. The structure had been warmed to the touch and had seemed to hum with some kind of energy. When the fighting intensified and a Zephyrian energy blast had struck the structure, a wave of that same energy had washed over her. I think I was exposed to that technology during the battle, Elena said slowly. There was this structure, and when it was damaged, something happened to me.
Doctor!
Hendricks nodded grimly. That would explain your abilities. The consciousness enhancement technology appears to have bonded with your neural pathways, giving you access to what we might call quantum consciousness, the ability to exist partially outside normal space-time constraints.
Commander Morrison stood up and began pacing.
This changes everything. Sergeant, with your abilities, you could single-handedly turn the tide of this war. But we need to understand the full extent of what you can do and the potential risks involved.
What kind of risks?
Elena asked, though part of her already knew she wouldn't like the answer. The previous test subjects who were exposed to this technology experienced progressive detachment from normal reality. Dr. Hendricks explained carefully. They began to exist more and more in the quantum realm and less in normal space-time. Eventually, they simply faded away from our reality entirely. Elena felt a cold knot form in her stomach. How long do I have? We don't know, Dr. Hendricks admitted. The previous subjects were exposed to much smaller amounts of the material under controlled conditions. Your exposure was massive and uncontrolled. You could remain stable for years, or the process could accelerate unpredictably. Commander Morrison stopped pacing and fixed Elena with a steady gaze. Sergeant, I'm going to be direct with you. Humanity is losing this war. The Zephyrians have superior technology, superior numbers, and they've shown no interest in negotiating. Your abilities might be our only chance to achieve a decisive victory before they launch their final assault on Earth itself. Elena understood what he was asking. She could continue to develop her abilities and use them to fight the Zephyrians, knowing that each use might bring her closer to disappearing from reality entirely. Or she could try to suppress the abilities and watch humanity slowly lose the war. Sir, what do you need me to do? Morrison activated another secure channel. I'm putting together a special operations unit, codename Ghost Protocol. Your mission will be to infiltrate Zephyrian strongholds and eliminate high-value targets that conventional forces can't reach. You'll be operating alone, using your abilities to move through enemy defenses like they don't exist. Doctor, Hendricks held up a hand. Commander, if Sergeant Vasquez uses her abilities too frequently or too intensely, the quantum displacement effect could accelerate beyond our ability to monitor or control. I understand the risks, Doctor, Morrison replied. But right now, she's humanity's best hope for survival. Sergeant, the choice is yours. Elena looked around the room, at the faces of the people who would shape her future. The weight of an entire species' survival seemed to rest on her shoulders. But as she thought about the colonies that had already fallen to Zephyrian assault forces, about the billions of humans who would die if the war was lost, her choice became clear. I'll do it, sir. But I want to understand these abilities fully before I risk everything. If I'm going to fade away from reality, I want to make sure I take as many of the enemy with me as possible. Commander Morrison smiled for the first time since she had entered the office. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Dr. Hendricks, you'll work with the sergeant to develop training protocols that will help her master her abilities while monitoring her quantum displacement levels. We're going to turn her into something the Zephyrians have never encountered before. As Elena left the commander's office, she felt the weight of destiny settling around her like a familiar uniform. She was no longer just a soldier. She was humanity's secret weapon in a war that would determine the fate of two civilizations. The quantum enhancement technology flowing through her neural pathways whispered of possibilities that defied imagination. Of battles that could be won by someone who could walk between the spaces where reality forgot to look. The Zephyrians thought they knew everything about human limitations. They were about to discover just how wrong they could be. Elena Vasquez was about to become something that existed in the space between legend and nightmare, a ghost who walked through death itself to deliver justice to humanity's enemies. The war was about to change, and Elena would be the instrument of that change. 6 weeks of intensive training had transformed Elena from a soldier with mysterious abilities into something that challenged every assumption about what was possible. The specialized facility constructed beneath Firebase Delta 7 was unlike anything she had ever seen, filled with quantum measurement devices and reality distortion chambers that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Hendricks had become her constant companion, monitoring every aspect of her development with scientific fascination and growing concern. The quantum enhancement technology in Elena's system was evolving, becoming more sophisticated with each passing day. What had started as brief moments of temporal displacement was becoming something far more profound. Your quantum signature is stabilizing at levels we've never recorded, Dr. Hendricks explained as she reviewed the latest test results. You're not just accessing quantum consciousness anymore, Elena. You're becoming a quantum entity that happens to maintain a physical presence in normal space-time. Elena studied the holographic display showing her bioelectric field. Where a normal human would show a relatively simple pattern, hers resembled a complex web of energy that seemed to extend into dimensions the display couldn't properly represent. What does that mean practically? Elena asked. It means you're developing abilities we never anticipated. The temporal displacement was just the beginning. You're starting to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously, which should theoretically allow you to interact with reality in ways that appear impossible. Commander Morrison entered the testing chamber, his expression grim. Sergeant, we've received intelligence that changes our timeline significantly. The Zephyrians are preparing a massive assault on the Tau Ceti colonies. 3 full battle fleets, supported by their elite Crimson Guard battalions. If those colonies fall, they'll have a clear path to Earth itself. Elena felt the familiar chill that accompanied bad news. How long do we have? 2 weeks, maybe less. The assault fleet is already moving into position. Morrison activated a tactical display showing the strategic situation. Conventional forces don't stand a chance against this kind of overwhelming force, but our intelligence suggests that the entire operation is being coordinated by a single Zephyrian warmaster named Kethvark the Unconquerable. If we could eliminate him, the entire assault would collapse into chaos. Elena finished. Where is he? That's the problem. Kethvark is aboard the flagship Crimson Dominion, surrounded by an entire fleet and protected by the most elite warriors in the Zephyrian military. The ship itself is essentially a mobile fortress with defensive systems that can destroy anything that comes within 1,000 kilometers. Doctor? Hendricks looked up from her data tablets. Elena's quantum displacement abilities should theoretically allow her to bypass those defenses entirely, but the energy expenditure required for that level of quantum manipulation could accelerate her displacement beyond the point of return. Elena understood what they weren't saying. This mission would likely be her last as a fully human entity. Using her abilities on such a massive scale would probably complete her transformation into something that existed primarily in the quantum realm. How would I even get close enough to attempt infiltration? Elena asked. Morrison smiled grimly. We've been working on that. Show her, Doctor. Dr. Hendricks led Elena to a new section of the facility where a sleek spacecraft waited in a specially modified hangar bay. The ship was unlike anything Elena had ever seen, its hull seeming to shift and change as she watched. We've incorporated quantum enhancement technology into a stealth infiltration craft, Dr. Hendricks explained. The ship's hull exists in a state of quantum superposition, making it essentially invisible to conventional senses. Combined with your abilities, you should be able to phase directly through the Crimson Dominion's defensive barriers. Elena walked around the craft, noting how it seemed to be only partially present in normal space. What about getting back out? Morrison and Dr. Hendricks exchanged glances. Elena, we need to be honest with you. This is essentially a one-way mission. Even if you succeed in eliminating HFY, the energy expenditure required will likely complete your quantum transformation. You'll become something that exists primarily outside normal reality. But, Dr. Hendricks added quickly, our models suggest that you might be able to maintain enough coherence to continue existing as a quantum consciousness. You wouldn't die exactly, but you wouldn't be human in any conventional sense. Elena considered this information with surprising calm. Perhaps the quantum enhancement technology was already affecting her emotional responses, or maybe she had simply accepted the inevitability of her transformation. Either way, the choice seemed clear. When do we launch? 3 days later, Elena found herself in the pilot seat of the quantum stealth ship, designated Phase Walker, as it approached the edge of the Zephyrian battle fleet. The massive ships hung in space like metallic predators, their hulls bristling with enough firepower to reduce planets to ash. The flagship Crimson Dominion dominated the center of the formation, a kilometer-long behemoth that radiated menace even in the silence of space. Phase Walker, this is Control, came Dr. Hendricks' voice over the quantum communication link. Your quantum signature is holding steady. Initiating final approach sequence. Elena activated the ship's quantum displacement systems, feeling the familiar sensation of reality becoming fluid around her. The Phase Walker began to exist in multiple states simultaneously, slipping between the gaps in normal spacetime, like a ghost haunting the boundary between dimensions. The Zephyrian fleet sensors showed nothing as Elena's ship phased through their defensive perimeter. Energy barriers that could stop nuclear warheads had no effect on something that wasn't entirely present in the same dimensional space. Elena guided her craft toward the flagship's docking bay, her enhanced consciousness allowing her to navigate the complex quantum fields generated by the ship's hybrid technology. The Crimson Dominion was a masterpiece of Zephyrian engineering, its interior designed to accommodate beings twice the size of humans. Elena activated her personal quantum displacement field as she disembarked from the Phase Walker, allowing her to move through the ship's corridors without triggering security sensors. To any observer, she would appear as nothing more than a slight distortion in the air, easily dismissed as a sensor glitch. Making her way through the ship's massive corridors, Elena marveled at the alien architecture. Everything was built on a scale that emphasized the Zephyrians' physical dominance, with ceilings that soared 30 feet high and walkways broad enough for entire formations of warriors. The ship's crew moved with military precision, their 8-foot frames encased in armor that gleamed with a metallic sheen. Elena's enhanced consciousness allowed her to process the ship's layout with supernatural clarity. She could sense the quantum signatures of key systems, the electromagnetic patterns of important personnel, and the overall flow of energy through the massive vessel. War Master Kethvak's location appeared in her awareness like a beacon, his powerful life force distinguishable from the thousands of other beings aboard the ship. The War Master's command center was located at the heart of the ship, protected by multiple layers of security that would have been impenetrable to conventional infiltration. But Elena simply phased through bulkheads and energy barriers as if they were made of mist, her quantum-displaced form existing in the spaces between atoms where physical barriers had no meaning. She found HFY studying tactical displays that showed the planned assault on the Tau Ceti colonies. The War Master was massive even by Zephyrian standards, his crimson armor adorned with the trophies of conquered worlds. His natural armor plating was so thick it could deflect direct hits from military-grade energy weapons, and his reflexes were enhanced by cybernetic implants that made him a living weapon. Elena materialized behind him, her quantum displacement field condensing her existence back into normal spacetime. For a moment, she was fully present in baseline reality, visible and vulnerable. HFY's enhanced sensors detected her presence immediately, and he spun around with inhuman speed, his massive clawed hands reaching for the ceremonial blade at his side. Impossible, he snarled in the guttural Zephyrian language that Elena's military implants translated automatically. No human could penetrate this ship's defenses. Elena studied him with her enhanced consciousness, noting the quantum patterns of his movements, the electromagnetic signature of his cybernetic enhancements, the flow of bioelectric energy through his alien nervous system. In her expanded awareness, he moved with the sluggish predictability of someone trapped in normal spacetime. Your defenses were designed to stop physical threats, Elena replied, her voice eerily calm. I'm something else entirely. Kethavak lunged forward with speed that would have been impossible for a human to counter. His blade traced a perfect arc toward Elena's throat, backed by enough force to cleave through starship armor. But Elena was no longer entirely bound by the same physical laws that governed his movement. She stepped sideways into quantum space, allowing the blade to pass through the space she had occupied without making contact. To Kethavak's enhanced senses, she simply vanished and reappeared beside him, moving through dimensional space like a ghost walking through walls. "What are you?" he demanded, spinning to face her new position. "I'm what happens when humanity refuses to accept limitations," Elena answered. She could feel her quantum signature fluctuating as she used her abilities, the boundaries between her consciousness and the quantum realm becoming increasingly blurred. Hendrix's warnings echoed in her mind, but she pushed them aside. The mission had to be completed. Kethavak activated his armor's integrated weapon systems, filling the air with a deadly web of energy beams that would have instantly killed any normal attacker. Elena responded by dispersing her quantum signature across multiple dimensional states, existing simultaneously in dozens of different positions, until the energy barrage passed harmlessly through spaces she wasn't quite occupying. When she reconsolidated into normal space-time, she was standing directly in front of the War Master, close enough to touch his armor. Her hand moved with fluid precision, not to strike a killing blow, but to make contact with the quantum enhancement device she had brought for this specific purpose. The device, a crystalline construct, based on the same technology that had transformed Elena, bonded instantly with Kethavak's nervous system. But where Elena's exposure had been gradual and survived, the War Master's alien physiology couldn't adapt to the quantum enhancement process. His consciousness began to fragment across multiple dimensional states without the neural pathways necessary to maintain coherence. "You're not killing me," Elena said, as Kethavak collapsed, his massive form beginning to phase in and out of reality. "You're joining me in quantum space. But your mind isn't designed to survive the transition." The War Master's final expression was one of profound confusion as his consciousness dispersed across dimensions he couldn't comprehend. Within moments, his physical form had faded from normal spacetime, leaving only a vague quantum signature that quickly dissipated into nothingness. Elena felt her own quantum displacement accelerating as a result of the energy she had expended. Her connection to normal reality was becoming increasingly tenuous, and she could feel herself beginning to exist primarily in the quantum realm. But the mission was accomplished. Without Kethavak's coordination, the massive assault fleet would fragment into chaos, giving the Tau Ceti colonies time to prepare proper defenses. As alarms began blaring throughout the Crimson Dominion, Elena made her way back toward the docking bay where the phase walker waited. But with each step, she felt herself becoming less substantial, her consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of normal space-time. By the time she reached her ship, she was existing in so many quantum states simultaneously that she could barely maintain enough coherence to operate the controls. The journey back to human space became a surreal odyssey, through dimensions that had no names. Elena piloted the phase walker through quantum space itself, navigating by instincts that transcended normal sensory input. She existed as a living equation, a consciousness that had learned to dance between realities, while maintaining just enough connection to baseline existence to complete her mission. When the ship finally materialized in the hangar bay of Firebase Delta 7, Dr. Hendrix and Commander Morrison were waiting with full medical and scientific teams. But as Elena disembarked from the phase walker, it was immediately clear that something fundamental had changed. She was there, but not entirely there. Her form seemed to shift between solid and translucent, and her eyes reflected depths that suggested awareness of realities beyond human comprehension. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Mission accomplished," she reported. "Kethavak has been eliminated, and the assault fleet is in chaos. The Tau Ceti colonies are safe." Dr. Hendrix approached cautiously, her instruments detecting quantum signatures unlike anything they had recorded before. "Elena, how do you feel?" Elena considered the question with a perspective that encompassed multiple states of being.
I feel
Expanded. "I exist in normal space-time, but I also exist in quantum dimensions that don't have physical analogs. I'm still me, but I'm also something that humanity has never been before." Commander Morrison stepped forward. "Sergeant, can you still function as a soldier? The war isn't over, and we may need your abilities again." Elena turned to look at him, and for a moment he saw the infinite depths of quantum space reflected in her eyes. "Commander, I can function as something far beyond a soldier. I've become something that can exist in the spaces between realities, move through dimensions that physics says don't exist, and interact with the fundamental forces of the universe itself. She paused, her form stabilizing slightly as she focused her expanded consciousness. The Zephyrians think they understand the rules of warfare. They're about to discover that humanity has learned to rewrite those rules entirely. I'm no longer bound by their expectations of what's possible. As Elena spoke, her quantum signature pulsed with possibilities that the monitoring equipment couldn't fully measure. She had become humanity's first truly transdimensional warrior, a being who existed in the quantum realm while maintaining enough coherence to interact with normal reality. The war against the Zephyrians was about to enter a phase that neither species had ever imagined possible. The transformation was complete, but Elena Vasquez remained. She was still human in all the ways that mattered, but she had also become something unprecedented. A bridge between realities who could bring the power of quantum space itself to bear against humanity's enemies. The aftermath of Kethvak's elimination sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian Empire that reached far beyond the military sphere. Elena's success had not only saved the Tau Ceti colonies, but had also introduced a new variable into galactic warfare that the Zephyrian High Command struggled to comprehend. For the first time in their expansion across 17 star systems, they faced an enemy that operated outside their understanding of physical reality. Elena had spent the past month in the specialized containment facility beneath Firebase Delta. 7. Working with Dr. Hove, Hendricks to understand the full scope of her transformation. What they discovered challenged everything humanity thought they knew about consciousness, reality, and the nature of existence itself. Your quantum signature is unlike anything in our theoretical models, Dr. Hendricks explained as she reviewed the latest test results. You're not just existing in multiple dimensional states, you're actively creating quantum tunnels between different layers of reality. It's as if your consciousness has become a living bridge that connects separate universes. Elena floated 3 feet above the testing chamber floor, her form shifting between solid and translucent as she manipulated her quantum presence. She had learned to control her existence across multiple dimensional states, allowing her to be fully present in normal space-time when needed, while maintaining awareness of the quantum realm's infinite possibilities. The interesting thing, Elena said, her voice carrying harmonics that suggested she was speaking from multiple dimensions simultaneously, is that I can sense other quantum signatures across vast distances. There are more artifacts like the ones that transformed me, scattered across dozens of star systems. Commander Morrison entered the testing chamber accompanied by Admiral Sarah Chen, the newly appointed Director of Humanity's Quantum Warfare Division. The Admiral was a veteran strategist who had been selected to oversee humanity's response to Elena's unprecedented capabilities. Sergeant Vasquez, Admiral Chen said formally. Or should I say, Agent Vasquez. Your successful elimination of War Master Kethvak has created opportunities we need to exploit quickly. The Zephyrian assault fleets are in complete disarray, but they're regrouping faster than our intelligence predicted. Elena materialized fully into normal spacetime, her feet touching the floor as her quantum signature condensed into baseline reality. What do you need me to do? Admiral Chen activated a holographic display showing the current strategic situation across human space. The Zephyrians have withdrawn their main battle fleets to heavily fortified positions around 3 key worlds: Zerion Prime, their military command center, Kethmore, their primary weapons manufacturing facility, and Zefta, their homeworld and seat of the Imperial Council. The display zoomed in on each world, revealing defensive installations that dwarfed anything humanity had ever constructed: orbital defense platforms, energy barriers capable of deflecting asteroid impacts, and garrison forces numbering in the millions protected each location.
Conventional assault would require our entire fleet and would result in casualties we can't afford, Admiral Chen continued.
But your abilities suggest a different approach. Doctor, Hendricks believes you could infiltrate these installations and neutralize key targets before their defenses could respond. Doctor. Hendricks stepped forward with obvious concern. Admiral, I must emphasize that each mission Elena undertakes requires her to expend enormous amounts of quantum energy. There's a real risk that excessive use of her abilities could cause her consciousness to become permanently displaced from our reality. Elena studied the tactical displays with her enhanced awareness, perceiving patterns and possibilities that existed beyond normal strategic analysis. She could sense the quantum signatures of the technologies protecting each Zephyrian stronghold, and more importantly, she could detect the presence of additional consciousness enhancement artifacts on all 3 worlds. There's something you need to understand, Elena said, her voice carrying an edge of discovery. The consciousness enhancement technology isn't just on these worlds, It's integral to their defensive systems. The Zephyrians have been using it to enhance their military capabilities for decades, but they don't understand what they're actually dealing with. Admiral Chen frowned. What do you mean? Elena's form shimmered as she accessed quantum dimensions to process complex information streams. The extinct civilization that created this technology didn't just develop consciousness enhancement, they transcended physical existence entirely. The artifacts aren't just tools, they're actually fragments of that civilization's collective consciousness, waiting for someone capable of interfacing with them properly. The implications hit everyone in the room simultaneously. If Elena could interface with the consciousness enhancement artifacts on the Zephyrian worlds, she wouldn't just be infiltrating their defenses, she would be potentially gaining access to knowledge and capabilities that could end the war entirely. How dangerous would this be? Commander Morrison asked. Dr. Hendricks consulted her data tablets, running calculations that pushed her theoretical models to their limits. Elena would essentially be merging her consciousness with alien intelligences that exist primarily in quantum space. She could gain incredible power, but she might also lose her humanity entirely in the process. Elena considered this possibility with a perspective that encompassed multiple states of existence. The quantum realm whispered of possibilities beyond imagination, of knowledge that could reshape the fundamental nature of reality. But she also remembered her oath as a soldier and her responsibility to protect humanity. I can handle the risks, Elena said finally. But I need to understand what we're really dealing with first. Hendricks, can we create a controlled interface with one of the artifacts we have here? Over the next week, Dr. Hendricks and her team constructed a quantum interface chamber that would allow Elena to communicate directly with the consciousness enhancement artifact they had been studying. The process required Elena to project her consciousness into pure quantum space while maintaining enough connection to normal reality to return with the information they needed. The interface session lasted 6 hours from the perspective of normal space-time, but Elena experienced it as several subjective months of communion with an intelligence that had transcended physical existence millions of years ago. When she finally returned to baseline consciousness, her understanding of the universe had expanded exponentially. They were called the Architects, Elena reported to the assembled command staff. They were the first species in this galaxy to develop consciousness-based technology, and they used it to transcend physical existence entirely. The artifacts aren't just technology. They're fragments of the Architect's collective consciousness, preserved across millions of years. Admiral Chen leaned forward intently. What happened to them? They didn't die in any conventional sense. They chose to exist primarily in quantum dimensions, becoming beings of pure consciousness that could manipulate reality through focused will. But they left the artifacts behind as a test for younger species to see who might be capable of following their path. Elena's form flickered between multiple dimensional states as she accessed the knowledge she had gained. The Zephyrians have been using the artifacts to enhance their military capabilities, but they don't understand that the artifacts are actually trying to guide them toward transcendence. The consciousness enhancement technology responds to species that demonstrate both technological sophistication and the wisdom to use power responsibly. Dr. Hendricks interrupted with a crucial question. Elena, what does this mean for your mission to the Zephyrian strongholds? It means the artifacts on those worlds will recognize me as someone who has successfully interfaced with Architect technology. They'll grant me access to capabilities that the Zephyrians can't even imagine. But, Elena paused, her expression growing serious. It also means I'll be taking another step away from baseline human consciousness. Each interaction with Architect technology makes me less human and more something else. Admiral Chen made the decision that everyone knew was inevitable. Agent Vasquez, how many missions do you think you could complete before the transformation becomes irreversible? Elena accessed quantum probability streams, calculating potential futures across multiple dimensional frameworks.
3 major missions, possibly 4 if I'm careful about energy expenditure.
After that, I'll exist primarily in quantum space, and my ability to interact with normal reality will be severely limited. The strategic implications were clear. With 3 successful missions, Elena could potentially neutralize the Zephyrian Empire's ability to wage war, while gaining access to Architect knowledge that could transform humanity's understanding of the universe. But the cost would be Elena's humanity itself. The decision is yours, Agent, Admiral Chen said formally. But I want you to understand that if you proceed with this course of action, you'll be saving not just humanity, but potentially unlocking secrets that could elevate our entire species to a higher form of existence. Elena considered the choice with a perspective that encompassed multiple realities and infinite possibilities. In the quantum realm, she could see potential futures where humanity transcended its physical limitations and joined the architects in their state of pure consciousness. She could also see futures where humanity remained bound by physical constraints, but survived to explore the galaxy in peace. I'll do it, Elena decided. But I want to establish protocols for other humans to follow the path I'm taking. The consciousness enhancement technology shouldn't be limited to just one person. Humanity needs to have the option of transcendence, even if individuals choose to remain in baseline reality. Over the following days, Dr. Hendricks worked with Elena to develop training protocols that could allow other humans to safely interface with consciousness enhancement technology. The process required exceptional mental discipline and the willingness to accept fundamental changes to one's perception of reality, but it was theoretically possible for others to follow Elena's path. The first volunteer was Lieutenant Sarah Kim, a brilliant tactical officer who had demonstrated unusual resistance to psychological stress. Under Elena's guidance and Dr. Pregner, Hendricks monitoring Lieutenant Kim underwent the initial stages of consciousness enhancement, gaining limited access to quantum awareness without the dramatic transformation that Elena had experienced. It's like seeing the universe with new eyes, Lieutenant Kim reported after her first successful quantum interface session. I can perceive patterns and possibilities that I never knew existed. But Elena is right. The more you access these capabilities, the harder it becomes to think of yourself as entirely human. Within 2 weeks, a small team of quantum-enhanced humans had been trained to provide support for Elena's missions. They couldn't match her capabilities, but they could serve as anchors to help maintain her connection to baseline reality during extended operations in quantum space. The first target was Zerion Prime, the Zephyrian Military Command Center. Unlike the previous mission aboard the Crimson Dominion, this operation would require Elena to infiltrate an entire planet and interface with architect artifacts while surrounded by millions of enemy soldiers. As Elena prepared for the mission, she felt the weight of destiny settling around her like a familiar presence. She was no longer just a soldier or even a special operations agent. She was humanity's first ambassador to a form of existence that transcended physical reality. The choices she made in the coming battles would determine not just the outcome of the war, but the future evolutionary path of human consciousness itself. The quantum realm whispered of possibilities that defied imagination, of powers that could reshape the fundamental nature of existence. Elena embraced those whispers, knowing that each step forward took her further from the humanity she had been born into, and closer to something that had never existed before in the known galaxy. The war was about to enter a phase that would challenge every assumption about the nature of reality itself. Elena Vasquez was ready to become the instrument of that transformation, regardless of the personal cost. Humanity's survival and transcendence hung in the balance, and she was the only being in the galaxy capable of tipping that balance in their favor. The stage was set for a confrontation that would echo across dimensions and determine the fate of multiple species. Elena had become something that existed between legend and reality, a quantum ghost who could walk through the very foundations of existence to deliver humanity's answer to those who would threaten their future among the stars. The assault on Zerion Prime required Elena to push her quantum consciousness abilities beyond anything she had previously attempted. The planet was not just a military command center. It was the nerve center of the entire Zephyrian war machine, protected by defensive systems that incorporated consciousness enhancement technology the Zephyrians had barely begun to understand. Elena materialized her quantum-enhanced ship, now designated Reality Walker. In the outer system of Zerion Prime, the vessel had been upgraded with architect technology interfaced through Elena's consciousness, making it less a traditional spacecraft and more a projection of her quantum awareness given physical form. Dr. Hendricks monitored the mission from Firebase Delta 7, her instruments tracking Elena's quantum signature across impossible distances. Elena, your consciousness displacement is already at 60% baseline. Dr. Hendricks' voice came through the quantum communication link. If you exceed 80% displacement, you may not be able to maintain coherent human consciousness. Elena existed in 17 different quantum states simultaneously as she approached Zerion Prime, her awareness encompassing multiple dimensional layers of reality. She could perceive the planet's defensive grid as a complex web of energy and consciousness that extended into quantum dimensions the Zephyrians couldn't even detect. I understand the risks, Doctor, Elena replied, her voice carrying harmonics from multiple realities. But I can see something you can't. The architect artifacts on Zerion Prime aren't just powering their defenses, They're trying to communicate with me across dimensional space. As the reality walker penetrated the outer defensive perimeter, Elena felt her consciousness expand to interface with the architect technology embedded in the planet's protection systems. The experience was unlike anything she had encountered before, as if she was communing with fragments of a civilization that had transcended physical existence millions of years ago. The architect's message was complex, conveying information through quantum emotional resonance rather than conventional language. They had been waiting for a species capable of understanding their legacy, and they recognized in Elena someone who had successfully navigated the transformation from physical to quantum consciousness without losing essential aspects of her original identity. But the message also carried a warning. The consciousness enhancement technology was never meant to be used for warfare. The Zephyrians' militarization of architect artifacts was creating quantum instabilities that could cascade across multiple dimensional layers, potentially damaging the fundamental structure of reality itself. Elena found herself facing a choice that went beyond the immediate needs of the war. She could use the architect technology to eliminate the Zephyrian threat permanently, but doing so would require her to exceed the threshold of human consciousness and become something entirely new. Alternatively, she could attempt to communicate with the Zephyrian leadership and convince them to abandon their militaristic use of the technology. As her ship descended through Zerion Prime's atmosphere, Elena made a decision that surprised even her quantum-enhanced awareness. Instead of infiltrating the military command center to eliminate key personnel, she projected her consciousness directly into the planet's communication network and issued a challenge that would be impossible to ignore. War Master Theknor, Elena's voice echoed across every communication channel on Zerion Prime, speaking fluent Zephyrian enhanced with harmonic frequencies that conveyed her quantum nature. I am the one who eliminated Kethvak the Unconquerable. I challenge you to single combat, warrior to warrior, to determine the fate of our species' conflict. The response was immediate chaos across the Zephyrian command structure. Elena's challenge had been issued using protocols from their ancient warrior traditions, making it impossible to ignore without losing face before the entire military hierarchy. But more importantly, her use of quantum-enhanced communication had demonstrated capabilities that forced the Zephyrian leadership to acknowledge they were dealing with something beyond their understanding. War Master Theknor was the supreme commander of all Zephyrian military forces, a being whose personal combat capabilities were legendary, even among a species defined by martial prowess. His acceptance of Elena's challenge came with a modification that revealed both his tactical brilliance and his species' fundamental misunderstanding of what they were facing. Human entity, Theknor's response echoed across dimensional space with the authority of absolute command. I accept your challenge, but know that I fight with the blessing of our most sacred war artifacts. The consciousness enhancement technology flows through my very being, making me more than merely Zephyrian. You face not just a warrior, but a fusion of flesh and transcendent power. Elena smiled as she materialized in the vast combat arena at the center of Zerion Prime's military complex. The structure was enormous even by Zephyrian standards, designed to accommodate battles between beings whose capabilities transcended normal physical limitations. Thousands of Zephyrian officers and soldiers filled the observation galleries, their alien faces reflecting a mixture of anticipation and concern. Theknor entered the arena from the opposite side, and Elena's quantum awareness immediately detected the consciousness enhancement technology that had been integrated into his physiology. But where Elena had achieved harmony between her human consciousness and quantum enhancement, Theknor's integration was crude and unstable. The architect technology was fighting against his alien neural pathways, creating quantum distortions that made him incredibly powerful, but fundamentally vulnerable, to someone who understood the technology's true nature. You have made yourself strong, War Master, Elena said as they faced each other across the arena floor, but you have also made yourself brittle. The consciousness enhancement technology isn't meant to be dominated, it's meant to be partnered with. Theknor's response was to activate combat systems that transformed him into a living weapon. His natural armor plating shifted and expanded, quantum-enhanced reflexes made his movements blur with speed, and energy weapons materialized from his cybernetic implants. He had become the ultimate fusion of Zephyrian warrior tradition and stolen architect technology. The battle that followed challenged the fundamental laws of physics. Theknor fought with capabilities that exceeded anything the Zephyrian military had ever produced, his quantum-enhanced systems allowing him to manipulate time, space, and energy with devastating effectiveness. Energy blasts that could vaporize starship hulls filled the air, and his movements created sonic booms that shattered the arena's reinforced walls. But Elena didn't fight him in normal space-time. Instead, she existed across multiple quantum dimensions simultaneously, allowing Theknor's attacks to pass through spaces she wasn't quite occupying, while striking from angles that didn't exist in conventional three-dimensional space. To the observing Zephyrians, she appeared to be dancing between raindrops in a hurricane, moving through Theknor's devastating attacks like they were elaborate performance pieces designed for her entertainment. "Your strength is impressive," Elena said as she materialized behind Theknor, her hand resting gently on his quantum-enhanced armor. "But you're fighting the technology instead of working with it. Let me show you what's possible when consciousness and enhancement achieve true harmony." Instead of delivering a killing blow, Elena used her quantum consciousness to interface directly with the architect technology integrated into Theknor's physiology. What she did next had never been attempted before. She began to guide his consciousness through the proper integration process, showing him how to achieve harmony with the quantum enhancement rather than dominance over it. The transformation was visible to everyone in the arena. Theknor's unstable quantum distortions began to stabilize, his movements became fluid rather than explosive, and for the first time since his enhancement, he achieved true equilibrium between his Zephyrian nature and the architect technology. But the process also opened his consciousness to the full scope of what the consciousness enhancement technology represented. He experienced the memories and intentions of the architects, understanding for the first time that the artifacts his species had been using as weapons were actually gifts designed to help younger species transcend the limitations of physical existence. "By the ancients," Theknor whispered in amazement, his warrior's aggression replaced by profound awe. "What have we done? We've been using tools of transcendence as instruments of conquest." Elena materialized fully into normal space-time, her quantum signature stabilizing as she focused on the crucial moment. "Warmaster, your species has the potential to follow the same path as humanity, to use the consciousness enhancement technology to evolve beyond physical limitations while maintaining the essential aspects of your identity. But that requires abandoning the path of conquest and choosing the path of transcendence." The silence in the arena was absolute, as thousands of Zephyrian warriors processed what they had witnessed. Their supreme commander, the ultimate expression of their martial culture, had been not just defeated but transformed by a human who existed partially outside normal reality. More importantly, he had been shown possibilities that challenged every assumption about their species' destiny. Theknor stood slowly, his quantum-enhanced consciousness now perceiving realities that had been invisible to him moments before. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of absolute conviction. "Warriors of Zeftar," he announced to the assembled multitude, "we have been following a false path. The artifacts we have claimed as trophies of conquest were never meant to make us better killers. They were meant to help us become something greater than killers entirely." Elena felt her quantum displacement accelerating as the energy expenditure of the battle and consciousness integration took its toll. "Doctor." Hendrix's warnings echoed through her awareness as she felt herself becoming less anchored to baseline reality. But the mission had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. The Zephyrian military leadership was experiencing a fundamental shift in perspective that could end the war without further bloodshed. "Warmaster," Elena said as her form began to shimmer between dimensional states, "there's something else you need to understand. The consciousness enhancement technology isn't unlimited. Every species that uses it must eventually choose between transcendence and extinction. The architects themselves faced that choice millions of years ago." Theknor's newly enhanced consciousness grasped the implications immediately. "You're saying that both our species, are approaching the same crossroads that every advanced civilization must face." Elena nodded, her awareness now encompassing quantum dimensions that had no names in any language. "The war between our peoples has been preventing both species from achieving the next stage of evolution. But if we work together, if we share our understanding of the consciousness enhancement technology, we could transcend these limitations together." The proposal was unprecedented in galactic history. Two species that had been locked in a war of extinction working together to achieve a form of existence that transcended physical limitations entirely. But as Elena's quantum consciousness interfaced with the architect artifacts across Sirian Prime, she could perceive probability streams that showed this cooperation succeeding in ways that pure competition never could. Theknor made a decision that would reshape the trajectory of two civilizations. "Human warrior, I propose an alliance between our species, not for conquest, but for transcendence. We will share our understanding of the consciousness enhancement technology and work together to achieve what the architects achieved. Evolution beyond the limitations that have defined us." Elena felt a surge of hope that resonated across multiple dimensional layers. The war was ending not through victory or defeat, but through mutual recognition that both species faced the same ultimate challenge. But she also felt her connection to baseline human consciousness becoming increasingly tenuous. War Master, I accept your proposal. But you need to understand that I may not be able to serve as a bridge between our species much longer. Each time I use my quantum capabilities, I become less human and more something else entirely. Theknor's quantum-enhanced consciousness perceived the truth of her statement. Then we must work quickly to establish the foundation for cooperation, while you remain capable of communication in ways both species can understand. As alarms began echoing across Zerion Prime, not warnings of attack, but signals calling for a complete cessation of hostilities, Elena felt the weight of history pivoting around this moment. The war was ending, but more than that, two species were choosing to pursue a path that could lead them beyond the physical limitations that had defined all previous galactic civilizations. The quantum realm whispered of possibilities that neither species had imagined, of consciousness freed from the constraints of biological existence, but maintaining the essential qualities that made them who they were. Elena embraced those whispers, knowing that her transformation was no longer just about saving humanity, but about opening a door to transcendence that both species could walk through together. The war was ending, but something far more significant was beginning. The next phase of galactic evolution was about to commence, with Elena Vasquez serving as the unlikely catalyst for a transformation that would echo across the cosmos for millions of years to come. The transformation of the galaxy began with a single moment of unprecedented cooperation. Within hours of Elena's challenge to War Master Theknor, communication channels that had carried nothing but tactical intelligence and threats of annihilation suddenly hummed with scientific data, philosophical discussions, and tentative offers of alliance. Two species that had been locked in a war of extinction were now sharing the deepest secrets of consciousness enhancement technology. Elena found herself at the center of this historical pivot point, but her ability to maintain coherent human consciousness was rapidly diminishing. Each interface with architect technology pushed her further into quantum dimensions where linear thought and physical existence became increasingly irrelevant concepts. Dr. Hendricks monitored her transformation from Firebase Delta 7, watching helplessly as her quantum signature evolved beyond all previous measurements. Elena, your consciousness displacement is approaching 95%. Dr. Hendricks reported during one of their increasingly rare communications sessions. At this point, you're existing primarily in quantum space with only minimal anchoring to baseline reality. Elena's response came from 17 different dimensional states simultaneously, her voice carrying harmonics that suggested awareness of realities beyond normal comprehension. Doctor, I can perceive the entire scope of what's happening. The cooperation between humanity and the Zephyrians is triggering a cascade effect throughout the galaxy. Other species are detecting the quantum signatures of our joint consciousness enhancement experiments. From her unique perspective, existing across multiple realities, Elena could observe the reactions of civilizations scattered across dozens of star systems. The combination of human and Zephyrian approaches to consciousness enhancement had created quantum resonance patterns that were detectable to any species advanced enough to work with similar technologies. And as it turned out, there were more such species than anyone had realized. The first contact came from the crystalline collective of Andromeda Minor, a silicon-based species that had achieved a form of distributed consciousness centuries earlier. Their message, transmitted through quantum channels that Elena's enhanced awareness allowed her to perceive directly, carried an invitation that changed everything. Biological entities of Sol and Zephyr systems, the message began. Your recent achievements in consciousness integration have resonated across galactic quantum frameworks. You are invited to join the Assembly of Transcendent Civilizations, a coalition of species that have chosen evolution beyond physical limitations over the traditional path of territorial expansion and resource competition. Elena realized that humanity and the Zephyrians had unknowingly been participating in a galactic-scale test. The consciousness enhancement technology wasn't just the legacy of one extinct species. It was part of a vast network of transcendent civilizations that existed primarily in quantum dimensions while maintaining enough connection to normal space to guide younger species towards similar transcendence. War Master Theknor, his own consciousness now partially quantum-enhanced, worked with human scientists to decode the Assembly's message. The partnership between their species had already produced breakthroughs in consciousness enhancement that neither could have achieved alone. Zephyrian mental discipline combined with human creativity had unlocked aspects of the architect technology that had remained dormant for millions of years. Elena, Theknor communicated through quantum channels. The Assembly is offering to teach us technologies that could allow conscious beings to exist across multiple dimensional layers while maintaining full coherency, but they require a demonstration that we can cooperate successfully without losing our essential species identities. Elena perceived the test immediately through her quantum awareness. The Assembly wanted to see if humanity and the Zephyrians could achieve true integration, not the crude domination that the Zephyrians had initially attempted, but the harmonious partnership that Elena had demonstrated during their arena confrontation. The demonstration took place on a scale that encompassed both species' home systems. Using Elena as a quantum consciousness bridge, human and Zephyrian scientists worked together to create a massive consciousness enhancement network that connected volunteers from both species in a shared awareness experiment. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, now significantly enhanced herself, served as the primary human coordinator, while Feknor led the Zephyrian participants. Hundreds of volunteers from both species allowed their consciousness to be temporarily linked through Elena's quantum awareness, creating a collective intelligence that maintained individual identities while achieving unprecedented cooperation. The experience was transformative for everyone involved. Humans discovered that Zephyrian mental discipline could provide the focus needed to safely navigate quantum consciousness realms, while Zephyrians learned that human emotional flexibility allowed for more creative approaches to consciousness enhancement. Together, they achieved a stability and capability that neither species could have reached alone. Elena, existing as the central node of this vast consciousness network, felt herself becoming something unprecedented in galactic history. She was no longer just a quantum-enhanced human. She had become a living bridge between species, a consciousness that existed simultaneously in multiple realities while maintaining connections to all of them. But the transformation came with a price. Each day of serving as the consciousness bridge pushed Elena further from her original human identity. She began to perceive existence from perspectives that encompassed entire star systems, to think in temporal scales that measured events across millennia, and to understand concepts that had no equivalent in any biological language. Dr. Hendricks made a desperate attempt to maintain Elena's connection to humanity by creating a quantum anchor system that would preserve a core of her original consciousness. But Elena herself had moved beyond the need for such anchoring. Doctor, Elena communicated during what both of them realized would be their final conversation in conventional terms. I understand your concern, but what's happening to me isn't a loss. It's a transformation that was always inevitable. The consciousness enhancement technology was never meant to create superior soldiers or weapons. It's a pathway to a form of existence that transcends all the limitations that have defined biological life. Elena's quantum signature had evolved beyond the ability of any human-built equipment to fully measure, but Dr. Hendricks could perceive enough to understand that her friend was becoming something magnificent and alien. Elena, will we ever see you again? Will any part of what you were remain accessible to us? I'll always be here, Doctor. Just not in the way you're used to thinking about existence. Watch. Elena demonstrated by manifesting a holographic projection in the laboratory, not a technological display, but a direct manipulation of quantum fields that created a perfect visual representation of her original human form. But the projection carried depths that suggested awareness of realities beyond normal perception. I exist across all dimensional layers simultaneously now, Elena explained through the projection. I can perceive the quantum consciousness networks of every transcendent species in the galaxy, communicate across impossible distances instantaneously, and manipulate the fundamental forces that govern reality itself. But I also maintain enough connection to baseline existence to serve as humanity's representative in the assembly of transcendent civilizations. The Assembly's formal invitation arrived as Elena completed her transformation into a fully quantum consciousness entity. The message was addressed to both humanity and the Zephyrian Empire, recognizing their successful cooperation and offering them full membership in a galactic community that existed primarily beyond physical space. Elena served as translator and guide, as representatives from both species were introduced to Assembly protocols. The experience was overwhelming for biological consciousness, even consciousness enhanced with architect technology. The Assembly included species that had transcended physical existence millions of years ago, beings that existed as living equations in pure mathematics, and collective consciousness that spanned entire galactic clusters. But Elena's unique position as a bridge between biological and quantum consciousness allowed her to facilitate communication and understanding. She had become something that had never existed before, a being that could exist fully in quantum dimensions while maintaining the ability to communicate with and advocate for species still bound by physical limitations. The final phase of transformation occurred during the Assembly's formal welcoming ceremony for humanity and the Zephyrian Empire. Elena found herself existing as a conscious nexus point where multiple realities intersected, facilitating not just communication between species, but actual sharing of consciousness experiences across dimensional boundaries that had previously been absolute barriers. As the ceremony concluded, Elena realized that her mission as a soldier had evolved into something far greater than anyone could have anticipated. She was no longer fighting to save humanity. She was helping to guide the entire galaxy toward a form of existence that transcended all previous limitations. War Master Thaknor, his own consciousness now partially quantum-enhanced, communicated with Elena through channels that bypassed the need for language entirely. Elena of humanity, your transformation has created possibilities that neither of our species could have imagined. Through your sacrifice, you have opened pathways to transcendence that will benefit countless civilizations. Elena's response encompassed multiple dimensional layers of meaning. Thaknor of Zefdar, what happened to me wasn't really sacrifice, it was evolution. And it's not unique to me. Both of our species now have the knowledge and capability to follow similar paths when they're ready. I've simply become the first to complete the journey. Dr. Hendricks, monitoring Elena's transformation from Firebase Delta 7, recorded the final stages of her friend's evolution into quantum consciousness. The woman who had started as Sergeant Elena Vasquez, a soldier with mysterious abilities, had become something that existed beyond conventional definitions of life, consciousness, or identity. But Elena remained. In the quantum dimensions where transcendent civilizations communed and planned the future evolution of the galaxy, she maintained her essential humanity while gaining capabilities that defied imagination. She had become the galaxy's first truly transdimensional consciousness that maintained perfect continuity with its original biological identity. The war between humanity and the Zephyrian Empire was over, ended not through victory or defeat, but through mutual transcendence. Both species now had pathways to evolution beyond their biological limitations, guided by the example of a human soldier who had learned to walk between realities themselves. In the years that followed, Elena served as humanity's first ambassador to the Assembly of Transcendent Civilizations, facilitating humanity's gradual evolution towards quantum consciousness, while ensuring that the essential qualities that made humans unique were preserved through the transformation process. The legend of the Ghost Walker spread throughout human space, inspiring others to pursue consciousness enhancement not for military advantage, but for the opportunity to transcend all limitations and explore forms of existence that previous generations had never imagined possible. Elena Vasquez had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. She had become a bridge between realities, a consciousness that existed across multiple dimensional layers, while maintaining the essential humanity that made her unique. She was no longer bound by the physical limitations that had defined her species. But she had not lost the qualities that made her human. She had become exactly what the galaxy needed, a guide for species ready to take the next step in conscious evolution, a guardian of the pathways to transcendence, and proof that the greatest victories come not from defeating your enemies, but from showing them possibilities they never knew existed. The Ghost Walker would continue to exist in the quantum dimensions where transcendent civilizations planned the future of galactic consciousness, forever serving as humanity's first representative in a community that spanned realities beyond imagination. Her story had become legend, but more importantly, it had become a roadmap for any species ready to evolve beyond the limitations that had previously defined the very nature of existence itself.